what we try to do on the weekends when we're coming off of a module is to extract some of the best examples that we're doing. We certainly want to encourage people learning from others, and there's a very strong peer and community aspect to this course already. I think if I go back in time, the company stories were all really great. I think the difference that I've seen with this group of people versus other versions of this class is that there is such an element of ownership to the companies. And so you really saw a lot of people's personal passion coming out when talking about the origin and sort of what they stand for. And I think it's because they either started these companies or have just, a lot at stake. And one thing that I noticed was that there were, more so than any other versions of the course that I've helped instruct, been lots of elements of a leadership story within those company stories. So in a couple of my one-on-one calls I've had with individual participants, I've actually encouraged them to maybe trim that down a little bit and just kind of focus on the company itself, and as if they were going into a room and trying to convince someone to join their organization versus a competitor's, which I've mentioned, I believe, in a couple of newsletters as well. And think about some of those more very personal elements of starting the company and saving that for the leadership story later on. So that's just a conversion that I've seen in this version that I have not typically seen in other versions. So overall, though, the company stories were really meaty. They were really descriptive. I thought that they were just really great ways to get to know people a little bit better, especially heading into meeting them virtually for some coaching calls. The user story, however, was a little bit more all over the map. And there were some instances where it felt like just kind of another version of a company story. In some cases, it felt like a sales pitch for the innovation or the big idea, rather than really like letting me into the mind or the day in the life of the user to whom this idea or innovation will be helpful. And so I struggled a bit to find some really great examples that really kind of personified the intent of this module. So when we get into the innovation story, that's really the part where so if you think about the way the course is set up, we ask people to write down their idea, their innovation, and hopefully provide some context of why they think it's important. And then we put it on ice, and then we go deep around the company story because we want people to be in touch with why they're in business and where they're going in a future state perspective. And hopefully that idea is going to stay true to the core, but also enable the growth. And then we move into the user because, hopefully the idea was born from an observation in which, this implementation is going to help someone or a group of people. So we really want to go deep in that realm so that you can pressure test the efficacy of that original idea. And when you start to have deeper conversations with a customer or an employee, you start to learn more about them, and that typically informs ways in which you might tweak your big idea. And so when we bring it all together in the innovation story and the final playbook, it's really this opportunity to reintroduce the idea now that you've thought about the company in more intimate terms and thought about the user in more intimate terms, so that it's still all about, hey, like this person or these people have this issue. We as a company stand for this, and we're really moving in this direction, and this big idea is going to help first and foremost, these people have better outcomes, but it's also going to be really positive for the business at the same time. And that's really how they all come to play. So it's really sort of user is saved by the heroics of the idea that will in turn make the user the hero again. And it's encased by the elements of the company, so that if anyone were to question, well, why are we doing this? It's like, no, this is who we stand for, and we come to work every day in service of that, plus where we want to go in the future. And this might seem insignificant, but in reality, this is an important stepping stone towards that. And so that's really the genesis of this first series of modules before we sort of pause and then move over to the leadership side. And often it's these one-on-ones that really clear the cobwebs for people in terms of what is the method to the madness and what are we working towards. So In talking with Aja and thinking about the fact that we had a work week and we were sort of kind of quiet in terms of communications, that's what was the impetus for this bat call to invite you guys to come and have a few words about that. And then also be available for your thoughts around that, but also anything else in your role as chairs that could be helpful from someone who's been to this rodeo many a time. So I'll pause there and let you all respond to that or tee up anything else that could be helpful.
Hey, Josh, I'll go ahead and comment. One thing that, I facilitated last year's program group as well as, my second rodeos this time around with this group. And, my own observation is that one thing I like what you've done this year is, if my recollection is correct, last year, we did the stories. We did the company story, the user story, the innovation story, the leadership story. But they never really were tied together. And I like the fact that before the leadership story, you're really challenging them through the innovation playbook to try to weave those first three stories together: company, user, and innovation. To really, as you say, tie the whole thing together. Create that, kind of synergy around vision, what we're doing and why we're doing it and who's benefiting. So I think that's terrific. And I just found it, interesting as a facilitator to, see that additional iteration this year, which, frankly, I applaud. So, kudos to the staff for, taking that additional step. It's gonna be interesting. I appreciate the feedback you gave on what you observed about the company stories and the user stories. And by the way, I appreciate the feedback you and Kate gave me specifically as a chair to some of the criticism I was, constructive criticism I was making around the company stories that I was looking at. Because sometimes, we get in our own heads and, we have our own notion of what good looks like. And, I felt perhaps I was being a little too critical. So thanks for the level set there. But if I had to, as people look at, I was looking at the module. Let's see, the innovation playbook is module 5, which is due June 26th. And, I think you guys do a good job of kind of laying out the deliverable. But I'm trying to, in my own head, be prepared to explain to my cohort in its simplest form, this is what you need to do with your innovation playbook. And I just want to repeat what I think I just heard from you around that and tell me if I've got this right. Okay. It's essentially this. You're trying to integrate your company story, which is basically, this is what we stand for. This is our mission, our vision, our purpose, with your innovation story. And I don't know whether I should put innovation before user, but with your innovation story, which is, this is what we are doing. This is where we are going, i.e. the innovation. And then with the user story, which is, this is why it's important. This is who benefits. Here's the hero. Yeah. And is that, it's as simple as that. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I think it sort of depends on the order in which that you lay it out. But I mean, those are all the elements, and that's what that you're thinking about it the right way. And it's really like, as a leader, you're like, hey, this is an idea that I think we need to implement, and here's why, right? And the why comes, should come first and foremost with an explanation, and this is where story is really powerful, of this user, right, who's in a less favorable place, right, and we want to get said user back to a better place, and to support why this is important for this organization to do this, not just because it's good for this user, but by the way, we stand for these things, and we're going in this direction, and so this isn't some crazy like harebrained idea. Like this fits actually quite well into what we claim that we're on this earth to do, right? And that's really where company story is important. And I bring up company story